Every day, you essentially pay your dues by doing the harder thing when it's the right thing to do. So reverse sled drags, this was obviously filmed in my gym, so we used a band, but we would get a heavier sled and maybe some stuff to go backwards for college athletes, but reverse sled drags, right? And then we also have some physio ball rockers here, which are not earth shattering for most people, but anti-extension training there, just kind of rocking back and forth. We could also do that with some sort of a plank drag through, which we'll show also here. So this is a suitcase carry. So the suitcase carry is really important because as she walks, you can see that when she picks her leg up here, the glute muscles on the side of her leg are trying here to prevent her from tipping over, but also her oblique muscles are working very, very hard to prevent her from tipping over. Cough, cough, balance beam, right? This is why this exercise is great, is because this is helpful to kind of maintain your side to side stability when you hit really heavy on impact and you're off. Some of this does come down to glute and core strength together. So suitcase carries are one of our favorite things to do because you can just, it's like the grocery carrying exercise, right? You can just load up really, really heavy with a low risk of something going wrong. But also these are phenomenal for shoulder as well, because the traction force is pulling on your rotator cuff. Your rotator cuff has to fire and kind of pull that back into the socket. So traction forces are really, really good. This is like a very good kind of 2 to 3 birds, one stone situation. So lots of suitcase carries are things we do. Also sideways sled drags are a really good option as well. And then down here, okay, plank drag throughs are anti-rotation, right? So when she goes to pull the weight through, she has to resist her body rotating down to the ground by using her obliques on the right side to keep her from folding, right? So anti-rotation exercises or anti-rotation press outs are also really, really good to kind of maintain that rotational stability as well. And then lastly, down here, some compression work, right? I talked about farmer's carries, which would be a suitcase carry with 2 weights, but also like weighted dumbbell pogo hops are phenomenal too as well. We use these a lot for the compression aspect of teaching athletes how to brace and how to breathe under that compression loading, which they're going to get with 1.5 punch pike or punch layout, or hitting the board for your Chenkos or whatever else they're doing. But also, this is a really great way to condition the Achilles and get that stronger and keep the tendon nice and healthy throughout the off season without doing tons and tons of impact programming. You think, okay, well, how many of those do I do? Like, what do I do? 5? Do I do 9? Do I do 15 sets? How many do I do? And if you look at the research for maximal strength, which is what we're trying to go for here, generally speaking, okay, this is not a hard and fast rule, but 3 to 5 sets of 6 to 10 is really where most of these exercises sit, right? If you're someone who is doing a little bit more single leg based stuff, doing 10 reps of split squats is a whole different level of horrible. So you have to be very careful about how gassed out you are versus if you're doing more of a double leg movement, right? You could easily get into, 10 squats or 10 hip lifts, glute bridges with 2 legs working together. It's not as taxing. There's this concept in the strength conditioning world called the bilateral deficit, which Mike Boyle popularized, is that theoretically, maybe you can lift more on each leg's added together. So how much weight on the right, how much on the left, add that together. You could probably lift more weight with each leg together versus one exercise where 2 legs are working together. So we do work both, but also at the same time, sometimes you might want to pull the reps down because, like I said, getting through 7 to 10 split squats or step ups is really, really challenging. So good rule of thumb that we usually use for people starting off is that 3 to 5, 6 to 10 range. 3 sets of 8 for that first couple of weeks, and maybe bumping up the volume a little bit as they get more into the summer and their second block or into the 6th or 8th week. Generally, that sees pretty good effects without having to change too many variables. The core work, as you guys probably know, will vary a ton, right? Like you have some exercises that are time-based, you have some exercises that are rep-based. So you have to kind of use your critical thinking and logic skills there to make sure you're not giving somebody, 60 reps of an exercise. That's just okay. So here's an example of some stuff that I find is really helpful in the off season. I mean, I obviously, coaching and stuff, have 20 kids to work with, but this is sometimes the best way to approach it with circuits and the groups that you work with, or have someone do it on their own at home and just have a clock going if they're not on campus. So for example, 10 stations, 40 seconds of work, 20 seconds of rest, 2 rounds through, that's 20 minutes. If you have a lot of people, you can do partners and have 2 sets of equipment, but you're alternating between upper body, lower body, core, and extra things because you're rotating what muscle group is working and you're building up global fatigue, right? And as you get farther into the summer, you can work harder things more and more and try to get more on top of that. All right. So here's an example of a template that you guys can find in the Drive and that I have used for many, many years now. So just alternating stations of what you want to do, what exercises you think are really, really helpful. You don't have to follow my template, but I think something that your stations well. This one had 12 instead of 10 because I had more kids, and we had 30 kids inside of the group. So I screenshotted this from a couple of years ago. But an actual application of this, right? I'm not going to go through all the exercises, but you see here how it's a nice spread of everything. So a working clock, you put on music. I do these with the athletes multiple times throughout the summer. They're pretty terrible, but they're really effective. They're super effective for 20 minutes to get a really good cardiovascular base that doesn't require going on a 5-mile run. So I would encourage people to maybe check that out and think about sprinkling in 1 to 2 of these workouts per week and trying to keep that aerobic base really, really high. And it's terrifying, right? Standing in that corner and doing your last pass when you're not quite conditioned yet is really, really terrifying. So you have to, there's time and a place to develop mental toughness when you're tired to push through, but there are smarter ways, I think, for us to develop that. And it's not saying that I don't think we should train, do your bar routine, go into the pit and do your last pass or your last dismount into the pit, or do 3 passes of your routine and go to the rod strip. Like I believe in that wholeheartedly, and I'll show you that. But I think we really want to make sure we understand the physiology of how we train somebody to get ready to handle that. The way that I do this is over 2 to 4 weeks, starting in the end of the summer to the beginning of maybe September, October, is we might do 2 weeks of just general crappiness in an aerobic conditioning session. If you've ever done workouts like this, I've done every single one of the workouts you're going to see. They're horrible if you really know how to push them the right way, and they have a great training effect. So 30 seconds of plate hops, up and up, back and down off a plate to work your quick twitch calf fibers. You run right over after 30 seconds and do med ball slams or rope slams for 30 seconds. Then you get on a really light sled and you just push a sled around the floor for 30 seconds. And after 90 seconds of that, which is that window we're training in, you're pretty gassed, right? And so you do that with maybe 2 or 3 partners, so you recover while they go. After that, we might make it a little bit harder by doing 30 seconds of squat jumps, 30 seconds of jump cast handstands on the floor like a drill, and then you hop on the bike and go hard for 30 seconds. That will annihilate you, right? But it's not dangerous. It's in terms of a dismount or floor, but it's really, really getting good conditioning up, because you're going to do the exact same type of crappy workout when you go to do your floor routine. It's the exact same energy system. And again, you'll notice the whole body is working, right? Like the plate hops, the med ball slams, and the sled are upper body, lower body, and core, right? The squat jumps, the jump cast handstands, the bike sprints with your arms are your whole body working. So we're teaching the entire body to work very, very hard, and what they call blood lactate levels to spike, because that's what happens in gymnastics when you're swinging on bars, squeezing your whole body as tight as you can, right? That is the definition of a whole body anaerobic power workout. So then after that happens, we might then start to transition over to our floor routine stuff. So tumble down into a resi or a pit, run back, do another tumbling pass, and then do broad jumps down the floor, walk 1 lap of handstand walks, and then get back in line, catch your breath while your teammate goes. You might put a running clock for 20 minutes so that every athlete gets through about 5 times. But as they get more and more tired, they train themselves to be tired and still have good technique into the pit, into the resi pit, right? To do their harder passes without the risk of something going, terrible on the hard floor and landing short. So we would do that for 2 weeks. And then finally, as we're doing this 2 weeks, right, we're also mixing in the sled pass routines, the water down sets, the basic sets, all that kind of stuff is mixed in here, because this is going to set them up really, really well for half sets or their dance throughs or all that kind of stuff. So I've worked with a lot of programs who have tried this and have really, really good success. And I personally, for me, I've seen this be enormously helpful when somebody is able to finally do this, because they're not going from 0 to, oh my God, I hope I don't land on my head on a double pike, or I hope I don't peel off on my bar. So lower body prehab ideas, there's a bajillion here that we have, but a lot of soft tissue stuff for their calves and their quads, a lot of eccentrics. The seated calf work is really good to maintain. Shin strength, hip work, side plank clamshells, eccentric stuff, anything they've gotten from their PT or their AT that they have class till 250 and practices at 230 and they can't do their prehab work or come to the training room. So all that stuff can maybe get tossed if the AT can talk with the strength coach or come to the strength conditioning session and do it together. That's what I've seen work best. Okay. And then lower body and then upper body prehab. So soft tissue work for their lats, their pecs, their teres major, adding in that upper body rowing stuff, trying to do the rotator cuff stuff, Turkish get-ups, like a lot of get-up work is really, really good for dynamic stability in season. And then again, anything that they need to do from AT or a PT perspective. Core work, hip and shoulder flexibility work is protecting the core. If I believe my boss has shown this in the MLB, the more you do your sport, the tighter you get and the more tired you get. So in throwers, if they throw, their shoulder gets stiff. We've measured this. So we have a study going right now. We measured 8 Division I athletes, men and women from a bunch of different schools on flexibility and strength and range of motion and jump testing. And we're going to check them in May when they come back to us. My theory, my hypothesis is that their strength will go down slightly because they're fatigued and they're tired, and that their range of motion and stiffness will go down as well. So they'll get less range of motion and more stiff because a muscular soft tissue is overworked. So in season, the thought of that paper to hopefully help show is that we need in season soft tissue care and flexibility work from ATs and self work and S&C to help combat some of that from developing so much that they're starting to get more back pressure or more back pain. So loaded carry work, core work, sled push work, really good to maintain some of that. Again, core bracing, core breathing stuff, very low level, very low intensity, but it does help quite a bit because there's only so much time you guys have in the gym. You're just focused on routines.
I guess gymnasts have a unique jump technique, the way they produce force, both visually and on force plates, compared to that of a soccer player or a track and field athlete. From that perspective, do you try to coach general jump technique, or is this a specific skill of jumping for the sport that has been developed from years of gymnastics?
Really good question. This is phenomenal. And we actually have force plate data, the VALD plates that we use. We have the metrics from our people, but we're talking to like 6 or 7 other schools and getting these jump metrics compared. So the reason I think their jump metrics are different is because they've only known gymnastic specific bounding jumping for their entire life. There are 2 different things, just like the general bucket. You need to, do your general strength and your gymnastic strength, your general power and your gymnastics power. You need to do general jumping and landing strength and conditioning training, and you need to do bounding and rebounding stuff. So you can see someone very clearly if they go like punch, 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 front tuck, stick. That's gymnastic specific, general, right? That landing, that squat pattern landing is proper general. So like last week, the wider the beast, wider the base, the higher the peak. So a lot of times if we coach somebody up on basic jump training and we give them basic jump strength and conditioning, their force goes through the roof, their power goes through the roof, because that's an untapped bucket, right? There's an opportunity there to get them really strong. So in the summer in the weight room, we teach them proper jump training, like mechanics. Some people jump differently, really low, squat depth with the higher amortization phase, really high jump. Some people have a different strategy. We see that a lot, but we do teach general jumping and landing mechanics. We also teach general jumping strength and power. We just teach them on the difference. We teach them like, hey, this is what you do in the general world, and when you're landing dismounts or landing floor routines or whatever, and then this is what you do gymnastics specific, the panel mat plyos, the deer jumps, the rebounds, the plyo stiffness drills. That's why I do them, because this skill of rebound and punching that you would need for a 1.5 layout or hitting the springboard is equally as valuable and as important as the general landing pattern you need. So they both need to be taught in the same way that an athlete needs to learn arch and hollow, but also a neutral position to land properly. I think that's why this conversation of why gymnasts need general aerobic training to help their specific event work, or they need general strength and conditioning to help their specific power down the road, right? This is the conversation that continues. Is there's a benefit to both. There's a benefit to both. And it's a mind-boggling untapped potential in across the whole world of kids that have not been exposed to proper strength and conditioning when they're younger, because of myths and misunderstandings of it's going to make you bulky, you're going to lose your flexibility, you're going to get hurt. Things that, like in the 70s were like Eastern Bloc Russia, and now it still shows up as you're going to break your leg if you weight lift, right? So I think it's all misunderstanding. It's all just myth. And there's just like a massive, massive opportunity. That's why I teach you guys about it. Because if they see your programs doing it, the 12-year-olds come to me. I've got a 12-year-old elite today who had elbow surgery, and she's like ready to start lifting. So it's cool to see the trickle down.
I have a question, and I'm sure some others are going to ask this. Where do you stand on conditioning before workout?
I just got asked this today. This is a great question. Okay, so I believe in it if you have a good rationale and understanding of the physiological underpinnings, right? So I'm not going to say where, who, what level, part of the world, right? I have literally gone to some training centers and it is carnage before they get in the events. It is like 60 minutes of destroy the athletes before they get on events. And I don't like, what are you getting out of the workout besides just the grind of mental toughness? Maybe like you have to have a really intelligent thought process behind that. Okay. So I don't believe in burying someone before the events because the events are so important and risky. But if you look at the physiology of explosive outputs and central nervous system dampening, this phenomenon of the nervous system ramping down as you do more explosive work, I think in the beginning of the practice, there is a huge opportunity to work on that. Right. So what we'll do with people, and Nick and I agree with this, he works with a lot of he works like 13 or 20 federations, right? So warm up, general plyo stuff, line work for basics and tumbling, and then maybe you do like 3 to 5 passes of explosive jumps over barrels, right? Or blocks or stuff like that to work on that really high demand, that high explosiveness. So low volume, high intensity at the beginning of the workout, along with doing that general physical preparation work, like the hollow rocks, the leg lifts, the rope climbs, that daily does and that basic stuff. I personally believe that is really good in the beginning. So doing all your general work and then doing your explosive jump work is good. But I don't think we should be doing 60 minutes of our strength at the beginning, because what's the goal? If it's off season, the goal is max strength. You want to make sure that you can put all your energy into that at the end of the practice. So you want to be pushing really, really hard. if the goal is the skill work and you need to really work on development of skills and progressions of technique, well, you're definitely not going to get a lot out of, the end of the practice when somebody is completely dead. If you do a ton of strength work in the beginning and then you don't have the opportunity to really plan that out more, I mean, injury risk is one. So I get a little worried about that. So.